Hi, I'm Randy Varnell, Creative Director on Battleborn from Gearbox.
So what were your goals heading into this game?
Wow, it really was. So we started the game for me right after Borderlands 2 was done, and we kind of ended Borderlands 2 with so many great ideas for characters and great shooter gameplay that we really started to let our imaginations run wild. So going into Battleborn, we approached it like we do a lot of games at Gearbox. How can we take some of our favorite types of gameplay, some of our favorite ideas for characters, and mix them together into something new and surprising? To take some of those great challenges like mixing ranged and melee in a first-person shooter together. It's stupid. I mean, we're insane sometimes when we do it, but it really was trying to solve some of those problems in a way that was just really exciting and action-based in the gameplay.
So talk a little about the differentiator between this and what people normally would experience, for instance, playing Borderlands.
Sure, in Borderlands, it really is kind of what I personally consider kind of a long-form RPG. In Borderlands, you start, you level up, but that leveling happens over the course of 20 or 30 or 40 hours, right? You stick with one character, you're leveling, every 20 or 30 minutes, you're getting new gear and all that. Battleborn, we're going to give you, instead of one character that you spend 40 hours with, we're going to give you 25 characters that you spend a lot of time with. So every time you play one of those characters, you come to a match and you get to experience all of that leveling curve every time. In Borderlands, I really like playing with the different builds for characters and picking different talents, finding different weapons, finding different ways to equip and customize the character, but that was kind of a slow, interesting growth. It's the classic RPG formula. In Battleborn, every time you jump into either a competitive mission or a cooperative story mission, you're going to get to start at level 1, level up to level 10, and every one of those levels make interesting choices for how you customize your character to play, move, shoot, all sorts of abilities. So really a different and unique experience for how you get to play with a character in different ways.
How did the fighting game genre influence this game?
Well, a couple of clear ways. I mean, you saw character select screen where you have that great grid of characters. So one, just the number of characters. We love that impact when we get it like Street Fighter or Super Smash Brothers, where you have so much choice and so much imagination there. But really, if you talk like to our artists and animators, they're going to talk about some deep influences. In a fighting game, for example, you play with characters where you're almost what they call frame counting. You're really looking at the moves and how sharp and snappy the moves are in fighting. In Battleborn, one of the big influences is like when we animated our characters, rather than going to like traditional mocap that we used in Borderlands and other games at Gearbox, we've hand keyframed animated all of our characters. So you get some really neat punchiness in the combat and some action that really evokes a little bit of that fighting game spirit. Maybe not up to the counting frame standpoint, but the fact that you really get something that's stylized and unique and I think very punchy and snappy and vibrant when you engage in combat.
And combat does have some characters that are pure shooter type characters, but talk about some of the other gameplay types when swords and other weapons, bows and arrows come into play.
Yeah, well, we kind of have pulled from the trough of imagining anything we could. Yeah, we've got an assault rifle character that starts off with, but we've got a couple of characters that you saw today with swords, Wrath and Phoebe. Wrath is a dual-wielding bladesman. Phoebe has one sword as kind of the classic fencer, but then has these other swords that fly around her head that she can send out in combat to do different things. We've got a dwarf with an axe, Boulder, who has a shield and an axe, who's neat because he is, I'm going to chop you up or I'm going to absorb all the damage. It's a really neat kind of flip of a coin type of gameplay, and that very defensive or very offensive at any moment he can flip. But then we've got Randy is one of my favorites. She's kind of an energy magic wielding character. We call her the Chaos Witch, and she has 4 arms. If you play her, it's the first thing I think you notice. You jump in and she's got 4 hands that are rendering in front of you, and each of them are throwing dark shadow energy, and she's conjuring these magical fire pillars that get in and trap enemies and do a lot of damage to them. So those I think are some of the big examples of that, and we've got different varieties and all of that. Yeah, we do have an elf with a bow, and that's even a cool gameplay too. I mean, it kind of takes the place of that classic big shot sniper in our universe, where you have to have that drawback, that bow play, and hold it for just the right shot and time it. But she also brings in some magic and mobility to the game that's really cool. And I will mention one more. Sorry, you asked me to talk about my children here, and so I'm gonna talk about them. Caldarius is a really good example of another archetype. Movement is a big part of the equation when we make our characters too. Caldarius is our kind of Gundam-influenced jetpack shock trooper, right? And he has a lot of mobility. He has a really long dash. He has the ability to double jump, and it's actually a directional double jump. Just like a Gundam, you jump up and then you can you thrust backwards or forwards or right or left, so he's really hard to pick out in a firefight. And then his big ultimate ability is a jetpack that sends him way up into the air and then crashing down for a big impact on the battlefield. So you really mix all of those ideas together and find different flavors of them, and man, we're just going and going and going with new ways to mix up these characters.